Hello, everybody. I'm a practicing therapist and a doctoral student of psychology. Today, we are going to go over how to help your avoidant partner open up to love and bonding, commitment, relationships, and being more comfortable being vulnerable and trusting you. Okay. So, the very first one is that you actually allow your partner to be themselves in any fashion that they are. That doesn't mean you're not expecting change, but that also means that you appreciate where they're coming from originally. You can see where they are right now. You like them for who they are, and you're expecting at one point for it to change as time goes on, but you're still okay with where they are right now. You appreciate them, you appreciate the journey, you appreciate the result after the journey, right? When you allow an avoidant to be themselves, you actually lower their guard. Because what ends up happening is they start to realize this is a safe space for them. Their environment is now feeling trust. And when I mean lower guard, I don't mean that you're going to hurt them. I'm saying that their walls are lower. They're letting you in, right? They're going to allow you to influence their decision more, which allows for more bonding in relationships. You start to see that your partner is more safer. And so let's say, for example, you always tell them, hey, I like you for the way you are, or you show that, right? You let them do what they want to do. Let's say they like to play pool, and maybe you feel uncomfortable because it's in a sports bar setting, and maybe you struggle with jealousy, but you allow them to do that, obviously, because that's their right. And you mentioned that you appreciate them doing pool, or you always want them to do those things to de-stress. And so you're supporting them for who they are. Immediately what starts happening is they feel so supported that if you say, hey, do you mind if you let me know when you get home? I'm just worried about you, and I know it's, kind of a situation I'm not comfortable with. I still am happy you're having fun, but do you think you could let me know when you get home? Immediately what starts happening is they start saying, yeah, that's no problem, because they know that you're not going to take their freedom away. And so they don't mind making you feel a little happy and safe as well. The next one is when you actually care about it. It sounds a little strange, but when you care about details, but not in a way where you're pointing them out. I'm going to try and explain it because this one can be a little bit tricky with avoidant individuals, but that's kind of the point of it. Now, if you always point at the small details and you're always like, oh, I notice you like this, or I know you always feel uncomfortable with this, or maybe you have depression or anxiety. You're like mentioning things that maybe they would feel a little bit suffocated about. That one might be a little bit later in the relationship. But in the beginning of relationships, even if you mention small things like, oh yeah, I think you did tell me that you used to play the guitar when you were younger. How did that feel when you were a teenager playing guitar with your brother? Like, what's the reason that you stopped playing, or what was the reason you got into it, right? And so you're signaling genuine interest about things that will help them to open up, but it's not about any flaw of theirs, or not too overly attention to places that they're not ready for. It's about interest, right? Maybe they said to you when they were younger that they grew up with a couple dogs, and you might say, oh yeah, I noticed that you had a couple dogs, but now you have a cat. What's the difference? What happened? Were those dogs your parents? You can start opening up when you pay attention to small things they briefly mention, because it allows them to share a side of themselves that maybe they hadn't shared with you or anybody previously, okay? The next one is that you respect their boundaries and possibly their limits at this point, right? Because sometimes they're not boundaries, they're just limits. Right now, maybe they're not ready for certain things. When a person respects an individual's need for personal space, or their own feelings, boundaries, or space for themselves, alone time, without a pressure for them to change right away, what you start doing is you start fostering trust. It strengthens trust. It creates a strong foundation that maybe the individual themselves feels very appreciated by you. It also makes them feel like they have a safe space for themselves, so they don't need to fight you necessarily for that space. A lot of times, avoidant individuals, sometimes I feel like it's you versus their space. And so obviously, because they've always been for themselves, they're going to choose their space over you. So sometimes if you're fighting that all the time, they might actually want to leave because they don't get that space all the time, and you're always maybe infringing on that space, or you're trying to control that space. And I'm not saying you're doing that, but it might feel like that. But if you allow them to have that space or the boundary or whatever they need to do, if they need time after work, they just have to decompress. They can't answer the text messages as quick as you want them to when they have a rough day. You know that about them. It's not personal. You let them do that. They're going to be more willing to lean into love, okay? The next one is, a lot of times this can be pretty overwhelming. So I'm going to try and say it delicately because I also don't want to judge anyone. I'm not judging you. But sometimes people might take this in a certain way because this trait comes from trauma. A lot of people might overshare. And so avoiding oversharing in the beginning of the relationship actually helps the avoidant to feel more comfortable. I know you guys don't realize this because sometimes what happens with avoidant individuals, especially when they're younger and they don't have a lot of experience in relationships, oversharing with an anxious and avoidant, what ends up happening is they may connect very quickly. I see this sometimes. They connect very quickly because what happens is when you overshare, the avoidant individual feels like you're very emotional, and that can overcompensate for their lack of emotion. So you guys connect in that way. So what ends up happening is a relationship becomes a very crash and burn type of relationship. But if you slowly maintain a measured pace of emotional sharing, it actually helps them to genuinely connect with you, not connect with the potential of what you have, like your wound with their wound, right? Because of anxious individuals, they become very attached to avoidant individuals because they seem very confident and very mysterious, right? And avoidant individuals may be attracted to anxious individuals because they hold a very huge emotional space. And avoidant individuals want to understand how to do that. Like they don't get that. So you guys are attached to the traits that you guys don't have in yourselves, right? And that is why oversharing can be really tricky because it actually does not reach with the genuine parts of love. It reaches with the parts of love that you guys might not want, at least not right away, because it can create a very large or painful breakup. Not all the time, but I hope you guys get what I mean. So avoiding oversharing can actually help an avoidant to open up because it's measured and it's slow, because you're trying to show that I'm a genuine person, right? Because sometimes oversharing, especially if an avoidant has had trauma with an anxious partner where it was oversharing, not that the anxious partner meant anything, but maybe the relationship crashed and burned. Now they might be even more cautious. So oversharing, they might perceive it as a red flag because of that history. And so they might think it's like a potential agenda. Maybe you're trying to get them to open up. You're trying to get them to feel a type of way. And so by you maintaining a more structured approach where you're opening up slowly in a secure fashion, they might actually lean into opening up as well, okay? The next one is consistency, that you are consistent regardless of your partner's behaviors, right? You're not going to pull away because they're pulling away. I understand if you're trying to give them space, but you're not playing games with them. You're consistent, you're approachable, you're appreciative. Your emotions are not displayed by your behaviors, right? So if you're having a really bad day at work, that doesn't mean suddenly you're going to drop off the face of the earth, or you're going to get mad at them and crash out at them for a reason that has nothing to do with them. You are overall consistent, and this creates a section in the avoidance mind where they start feeling like, okay, this is a part of my life that equals safety. And so they start leaning more into you because you are a safe, consistent, low pressure type of person where you're not demanding too much, but you also don't play games. You're not twisting things around where the avoidant individual is confused about what they have to do. The next one is you actually keep your avoidance secrets. You're not using them against them. If an avoidant opens up and says, yeah, growing up, my dad was really distant and I really didn't get to know the man very well. Maybe they opened up. And then maybe when you guys are fighting, you might yell at them and say, you're distant just like your dad. That might make them feel like you did not take care of what they gave you. Or you tell your friends about them and your friends are saying, oh yeah, that's a red flag, whatever it is. That might make your partner feel like it's not a safe space. However, if you keep them and you keep it in a safe way, you never throw it at them, you hold it very special, they will feel like they can open up even more, okay? And the next one is accepting responsibility of your portion of the disagreement. In general, everybody makes mistakes. By you accepting that responsibility, I made that mistake, I acknowledge that, they might feel more open to loving you, okay? So I'm going to go ahead and summarize this and then we're going to wrap this up, okay? So the ways that an avoidant will feel open to loving you is if you allow them to be themselves. If you give attention to details about their interests, if you respect their boundaries, if you avoid oversharing, if you're consistent, if you keep their secrets, and if you accept responsibility for your portion of the disagreement. I hope this video was helpful. Please like, subscribe. I'll see you in the next one.